Every day, America Online is making it easier for people to live, work, and play.
Hey, Dan, ready for the game? I'm just finishing up here with my new kayaking friends.
Kayaking friends on your computer?
Yeah, I just got America Online.
In the early days of at-home access to the World Wide Web, dial-up connections were the primary method of service, which meant internet connections were often very slow and extremely unreliable.
Hey, we can take care of all that before we go.
Yeah, right.
Oh, with America Online.
America Online can do all that?
Even if you had fast and reliable satellite or broadband internet, many of those services had limits and caps on how much data bandwidth could be consumed every month. For flight simmers, this meant that simulating airline operations based on actual flight schedules could be a formidable challenge. As it was, going online to surf the web for timetables and flight information was often impossible, not to mention that not every airline published an online timetable or even had a website at all back then. The only other affordable and relatively easy option was to have an airline's printed timetables. These were typically only available from the relevant check-in desks at the airport, were sometimes prone to errors of their own, and many didn't even publish which aircraft types were used on their routes. Even worse than that, creating flight plans was a hassle all its own, with little or no access to real airline dispatch routes back in those days, meaning you either had to rely on the included FS Flight Planner or create your own flight plans by hand and hope for the best. What a pile of junk. The folks over at well-known flight simulation storefront and publisher Flight One seem to understand this problem, and they must have taken it personally because they decided to do something about it. Enter Ultimate Airlines, an expansion for FS 2000, later patched for FS 2002, that aims to solve all of these problems by offering the entire world's scheduled flights in a single, lightweight application. Yes, you heard that right. Pretty much all of the world's scheduled flights in the late summer of 2000 are included, more than 255,000 real-world scheduled flights spanning the shortest regional hops to the longest trans-Pacific nonstops. This was an absolute goldmine for those among us who wanted to live up to the Microsoft Flight Simulator slogan of the time, and it continues to be something of a goldmine to this day, at least for those like me who love exploring this kind of stuff. Development of Ultimate Airlines likely began sometime in the spring or early summer of 2000. In September of that year, at the European Computer Trade Show, Flight One set up a booth alongside one of its contemporaries, Just Flight, and it was here that Ultimate Airlines was officially announced, among some other expansions and add-ons. A couple of months later, on November 12th, Flight One and Just Flight released and published Ultimate Airlines jointly to their respective online shops, where it immediately became a hit with consumers. To get Ultimate Airlines, you could either download it from Flight One directly or purchase it as a full big box release from Just Flight, which is just what I happen to have right here. The box borrows some of the branding from Microsoft's own Flight Simulator, which remains a very common trope of flight sim expansions to this day. An interesting note is that the box actually uses a real photo, but any semblance of the actual airline logos have all been removed so as to avoid potential copyright issues. No doubt this is almost entirely because of a cease and desist letter that was delivered to FlightSim.com and presumably many other flight sim companies and groups in 1999, courtesy of American Airlines. Apparently, they thought the flight simulation community was making money off of their branding and they wanted to protect their valuable assets, as they put it. Anyway, moving on, the backside contains some additional context about what's included in both English and German, since this was the European box release, and several screenshots of the program as well as a couple from Flight Simulator. It's important to note that this program did not actually add anything to the Flight Simulator directly. Opening the box, there's several printed advertisement materials from Just Flight and PC Pilot showing a bunch of other add-ons and other products that make me feel all warm and fuzzy and nostalgic inside. Man, I miss the days when these were included in just about every PC expansion box you got for any game or sim or whatever you were doing. My copy even came with a completely blank registration form. I wonder what would happen if I sent it in today. At the bottom of these advertisements is the instruction manual, which is only 40 black and white pages long and split into 2 identical sections with English and German versions of basic information about how to install and run Ultimate Airlines, and of course the jewel case containing the disc for installation. Should you put this circular collection of 2-decade-old bits and bytes into your laser-equipped high-speed turntable, you'll be met with the installation program for Ultimate Airlines, which itself is quite standard and unsurprising. Once the installation is complete, you'll find that you have about 35 megabytes less of that precious hard disk space, as well as a few extra files explaining where that space went. Starting up the freshly installed executable summons the main event of Ultimate Airlines. The initial screen is full of a lot of information, but mostly the only things that need be worried about are the departure airport, the search boxes, these buttons and the additional tabs across the top, with most of the rest being extraneous visual fluff that isn't necessary in any way, but that I can't help but look at through lenses that are so rose-tinted that I feel like a Terminator. Entering a departure airport will afford you the ability to select a destination from a list, or you can simply type in the ICAO code for the airport you want to fly to. Once a destination is selected, you can choose the specific flight you would like to fly, organized by airline, flight number, aircraft type, and departure arrival times. These are all based on real-world flight schedules containing a total of about 255,000 flights, dating to somewhere between September and November of 2000. An interesting time capsule to mess around with if you have an interest in old schedules and operations. It's also worth noting at this point that the included flight schedules are not the only schedules that were ever available for the program. If you were a member of a virtual airline that sent their schedule information over to Flight 1 back in the day, that schedule would be added to the Flight 1 Ultimate Airlines download page, where it could be downloaded and substituted for the included airline schedules, making finding new virtual flights for your virtual airline career easier and more convenient. Upon selecting a flight,
welcome aboard Delta Airlines Flight 62, Service to New York.
You get the lovely disembodied voice of some random lady welcoming you on board. Aside from that, the information boxes will update, as will your virtual boarding pass at the bottom of the screen. I find this to be an interesting inclusion given that we are meant to be the pilot and therefore don't require a boarding pass, but it's a nice touch that adds to the atmosphere, I suppose. A certain subgroup of simmers who enjoy being virtual passengers on their flights are sure to appreciate this boarding pass as well. You can also select an alternate airport in the event that alternate events result in alternate plans being alternated, though this is optional. Once you have your flight parameters set, you can view a flight plan based on the flight that you've selected that uses proper high and low altitude routings as appropriate. The flight plans even include performance data for the particular aircraft selected for the flight, such as top of climb, step climb, and top of descent points. Unfortunately, this performance data is often quite laughably optimistic. For example, I don't think we'll be accomplishing that. Some of the included performance files are better than others, and it's a bit of a crapshoot which one you end up getting, whether it's really well made or really shoddily thrown together, and these problems can be remedied by using the included aircraft specification modifier program, but in my opinion this is a bit in the weeds for many users who just want to quickly jump in and simulate their favorite airlines without much hassle. Back to the flight plans, it isn't entirely clear where the flight plan route information itself came from, but what is clear is that it does not include provisions for SIDS or stars. The vast majority of flight plans out of any given departure airport contain the same initial waypoint, acting as some sort of anchor for a given airport's flight plans to start from. This can be very annoying if this first point happens to be in the opposite direction of the direction you intend to fly, and overall these pre-made flight plans can be inconvenient completely if you want to simulate a SID or a star. Once you've verified your plan and optionally saved it to the logbook, more on that in a second, you are given the ability to export it to a number of different programs, such as directly exporting to a ProFlight 2000 Adventure with this button at the top, or to a number of external formats such as the default FS2000 flight plan, Radar Contact, Squawk Box, and some others. Moving on from flight plans, you can also send the flight to your logbook to add up your time and track your flying career. As you add entries, you can choose to change the hours for both day, night, and instrument flying to keep track of your overall career progress in a manner similar, however a bit simplified from the real world. Very nifty. Additionally, Ultimate Airlines includes a status board, which users of the original version of Ultimate Traffic from back in the day may recognize, as this feature was carried over into that program to assist in AI traffic spotting. In Ultimate Airlines, the status board is a real-time, live updating information center for all the flights that would be departing from a given departure airport at the current time, and includes announcements similar to those you would hear in a real airport that doesn't really sound half bad.
This is the final boarding call for British Airways Flight 04, service to London.
You can double-click any flight on the list to have it preloaded into the main screen for you. I really enjoy this feature. It's great fun to find a flight departing out of the last airport I flew into that's at the gate and boarding soon, and then recreate that same situation in the flight simulator. Finally, the settings screen includes some nice touch features too, such as the ability to have Ultimate Airlines start from status boards upon the opening, or change how the program handles your origination airports each time you use it. Unfortunately, I did run into a couple of strange issues with the program, such as when I tried to click on the Help button, I immediately got an out-of-memory error that closed the program. I got a similar kind of shutdown error when trying to print anything. I imagine this is because I have no printer set up on my Windows XP computer, but it was still surprising to see errors like this in an otherwise well-made application. To wrap things up, I'd say Ultimate Airlines is a very unique product, whose existence was dependent almost entirely upon the limitations of its time, which is definitely part of the reason why it didn't last all that long on product catalogs and has been so quickly forgotten in the modern day. One nail in the coffin was the rise of quick and convenient access to flight schedules, which became easier and easier as internet connections improved and web services like FlightAware arose. Flight planning utilities such as FS Build and FS Navigator also made some of Ultimate Airlines' features obsolete, as they could provide more realistic flight plans with much more flexibility and provided a number of useful features more directly related to those functions. What's more, as far as I can tell, no update was ever released for the schedules to bring them up to date beyond those initially included, meaning that users of the program were stuck with either their virtual airline flight schedules if they were supported, or real flight schedules from the summer and fall of 2000. If you happen to know anything about the early 2000s and onward in the airline industry, airlines were coming and going, aircraft were being retired, and schedules would change dramatically in the following years as world events unfolded. Suffice to say, the included schedules became outdated pretty rapidly. From what I can scrape together online, Ultimate Airlines was decently popular, with Flight One claiming it to be a bestseller on their main webpage for the product. Some other digging unearthed several threads on various forums asking if anyone remembered the add-on, mostly from around the 2004 to 2006 range, and some asking if the add-on could be made to work with FS 2004. Other than that, though, it seems as though this product is all but forgotten in the FS world, which is a shame, because even though many of its functions are now obsolete, it still offers a unique way to find and keep track of your flights that doesn't require you to own and look through dozens of timetables or online schedules, or rely on the flight simulator logbooks and manual log keeping to track your overall flight times. These days, Ultimate Airlines is but a tiny footnote in a long history of flight simmers' ever-increasing desire to simulate realistic airline operations more accurately, and at the time it provided some very important and unique functions to accomplish this goal. In an interesting twist of fate, I actually find this program somewhat useful today to choose flights to replicate in Flight Simulator 2004, with my retro AI setup dated to about 1998. The program is completely standalone and does not require Flight Simulator 2000 or any flight simulator to be installed at all to see and use the included flight schedule and pretty much all of its features. When I'm having trouble deciding what airline or aircraft or destination I want to fly to, sometimes firing up Ultimate Airlines and searching around, I'll find just the flight that I didn't know I wanted to fly. So maybe there's still some life left in this often forgotten piece of flight simulation history after all. Thanks Thanks so much for watching. If you wanted to see more content like this, I have one other video that I've already posted. I also want to apologize for the extreme length of time between these videos. I promise it didn't take me 3 months just to put this one together. It's just that life in between the last video and this video is extremely complex and it's a whole thing. So hopefully I'll be able to post more content and a lot more frequently going forward. Thanks so much for watching and stay tuned.